Welcome, Terrilynn Dubreuil, Traveling Artista. Today I thought we'd work with some basic color theory. Now a lot of us have learned this, but it never hurts to review. So, if we do understand, we have our three primary colors in pigment. And those three primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. If you take two of those and mix them together, like red and blue, you will get a secondary color, and that would be purple. Red and yellow make orange, yellow and blue make green. Going further, we can create our tertiary colors. Tertiary colors will be taking something like green, mixing it with one of the primaries, yellow, and creating a yellow-green. This can create very fascinating color schemes. As we go along, I also want to introduce and review aspects of analogous colors. Analogous colors are what we call family of colors. So they would be very close on the color wheel. These would be analogous, these would be analogous. It's some section of the color wheel together. And then another aspect of color theory is your complementary colors. Complementary colors are basically the colors that are opposite on the color wheel. For instance, the complement of red is green, and that's the combination of the other two primary colors. So if you have red, you combine the other two, yellow and blue, you get green. So that's the complementary color. It also works with the secondary and tertiary colors. So you can have a purple violet or a red violet, and the complement of that will be your yellow green. These are great things to play with. Now, one intent of complementary colors is to intensify the colors near it. If you have basically a strong red painting and you add a hint of your green in there, that will intensify that red and make it seem more red. Winslow Homer was wonderful with this. He had some beautiful gray blues, and then he would add in a spark of a cadmium red, and that would just pop those gray blues out. Another use for complementary colors is to neutralize the color. By mixing them together, if you take a red and a green and you blend them together quite a bit, you end up with a very neutral tone. So instead of going into a painting and using gray as a neutral, you can use the combination of these complementary colors to create more interesting grays. Now, I have started here some sketches from a very simple still landscape that I have, and I want to try a few of these. And I'll probably fast forward through the application of this so you can see how we go. The first one will be with primary colors, the next with secondary colors, then we're going to try an analogous color scheme, and finally a complementary color scheme. And this will give us a good foundation of where we're going to be going in the future with color. Our first sketch is with the primary colors red, yellow, and blue. I've also chosen a shade and a tint of each one. That's a dark and a light. As I begin sketching in, I start with the dark blue background, laying that in rather quickly. Again, these are studies and just sketches. They're not meant to be masterpieces. Now I'm throwing in that red, the second color, getting the general aspect and shapes of what I'm doing, but I'm always thinking about the final composition. Now with the yellow. So you can see already we have our three primary colors, blue, red, and yellow. This will work well with our triadic primary color scheme. Triadic meaning just the three basic primaries. In spots you can see I am starting to overlay some of the tints and shades of each of the colors. The tint are the lighter, like the lighter blue I just lay over, and now the shade of the yellow, which is that deeper ochre color. As I'm applying more color, I'm trying to start to think three-dimensionally. We started out with that simple flat sketch, but now I want to start adding in depth to the piece. In some areas, note near the bottom, I have overlaid a couple colors like the yellow and the blue, and that's creating a kind of a neutral green color. Remember we talked about taking two complementary colors and overlaying them, and that neutralizes those colors. Otherwise, by placing them in juxtaposition to each other, it's going to intensify the color, and you can see that happening here. One item that I'm thinking about as I'm going along is that the red and that background blue are probably very similar in tone. If I took a black and white picture of this, that would pop out. So I want to create a differentiation between the two. I am now adding in some more intense red that also pushes it up higher on the value scale, so it should pop that tree forward from that background a little bit more. I've added the little, I guess what they call tree holes, but I just call the negative space between some of the leaves, and it opens up the tree. You don't want a tree to be totally solid. You always like to have a little bit of light shining through from behind, and it makes a more natural aspect to that tree. Adding in a couple little details, the trunks. Make them interesting lines, don't just throw in straight lines. Each time you touch the pastel or whatever you're painting with to the surface, you want to try to create interest. Every stroke should work toward helping out the final painting in the end. So be thinking as you're going along. Sometimes we want to act instinctively, but at the same time we want to balance that out with a thought process. Lightening up that yellow a little bit by adding a tint in there. Again, trying to add a little bit of depth. Touching up some negative spaces around those leaves. When I found this scene, I was just driving down the road near Pisgah Highway, and it just struck me, that bright lime green grass with that magenta and fuchsia tree in the foreground, and I've captured it, and I've tried a number of times to create a painting with it, but it's almost like the photograph is too strong for this image. But it's fun to play with. It gives us something that we can start with and base sketches on for studies. Here is the final sketch of that one, and now I'm ready to move on to my secondary colors. And you see the orange, green, and purple here with their tints and shades as well. Beginning by throwing in that dark purple in the background. Just kind of tried to show you the color there. And again, working with the secondary colors. The secondary colors are a combination of the primaries. So here is a deep shade of orange I'm throwing in around the tree, that purple in the background, and then I will come in with an intense green, because that's what initially drew me to this scene. Right now I'm kind of working with the shades and the hues, the pure hues of the colors, and then I'll work dark and light on top. Pastel gives you great flexibility in how you apply the color. You can blend if you want. Toward the end, you don't want to blend too much. You want to have those beautiful strokes showing as you're painting. Overlay a little bit of color. That green on top of that purple is going to push those trees on the hillside back a little bit further, neutralizing it again. Remember, by combining the two and overlaying them, it helps to neutralize. Now I'm bringing in a little bit of that brighter orange to pop that tree up from the background and to separate it. And I'm thinking three-dimensionally. So you talk about shading. Even groups of leaves will have their highlight, their core, some of the reflected light, and the shadows in between. So you always want to be thinking about that. And if you have not seen my basic drawing videos about shading, do go and check that out, because it applies to everything. Now I'm trying to pull out a little more of that orange. Giving it texture, to be thinking about the leaves. I don't want to draw each individual leaf, but masses of the leaves. Some masses are greater and larger in area, and others are more detailed. Working with the negative space around the trunk with that background green and the brighter yellow-green that we're working with to differentiate the ground from the tree. And you can see how different areas are overlaid, like the background depth of the hillside trees is dark, and that helps pop out the leaves on the tree. And then as I get down under the tree where it's darker and shaded because of the shadows there, and the trunk area, you want to pop that out by putting that negative space of that yellow-green in behind. And also think about a little more detail as you're coming forward. Enjoy those strokes. It's fun to put those down on the paper. I gotta tell you, I'm not totally thrilled with these sketches, but it gives some good basic concepts of color theory. Again, this is a foundation series so that we can build on top of this and really expand as we go along. I know a lot of the teaching videos out there jump right into advanced techniques, but I wanted to lay down some foundations. And I guess that's the teacher in me. I've done this for a few decades now. Well, not that long, not that old, but you know how it is. Anyway, here's the final secondary triadic color scheme painting and the combination of the two and how they compare, and it gives a very different look to each depending on your colors. Stay tuned for the next one and stay dusty.